Alright, ecology, this is your second note set. This is going to cover your food chains, your webs, your cycles of matter, and your pyramids. So our main concept for the chains is that a food chain and a food web model the flow of energy in an ecosystem. A food chain is a model that shows a sequence of feeding relationships. A food chain links species by their feeding relationships. A food chain follows the connection between one producer and a single chain of consumers within an ecosystem. So the example here, you have, what is that, grandma? Grandma grass?
Grandma grass. I have no idea.
Grandma grass?
Grandma grass.
I call my grandma grandma.
Grandma.
Anyway.
No, now we're going to think about eating grandma. That's not
gross.
And then the dessert cottontail.
Yes.
Tasty.
And then a harassment hawk. Anyway, so we have our grass to a rabbit to a hawk. That would be a chain. It's just a single sequential event.
Yep. The hawk eats the rabbit.
And
Rabbit eats the grass.
Oh, look at this. The flow of energy. The energy from the grass goes to the rabbit. Energy from the rabbit goes to the hawk.
Hence the direction of the arrows?
Yes.
What? So the grass doesn't eat the rabbit?
Where does the grass get the energy from?
The
sun?
The sun,
Yeah,
okay.
so sun, which is usually our starting point for all energy transfers.
Ooh. And picture.
Consumers are not all alike. Herbivores eat only plants, so producers. Carnivores eat only animals, so they eat other consumers. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. Detritivores eat dead organic matter. And decomposers are detritivores that break down organic matter into simpler compounds. So that would be like a worm.
And that's where a bunch of mine were getting confused on what the difference between those two are. And it's not really a difference. One is a subcategory of another.
Yeah.
There's not really much
else.
I was going to say,
Mushroom?
welcome to 5th grade.
Yeah. Okay, specialists are consumers that primarily eat one specific organism or a very small number of organisms. Generalists are consumers that have a varying diet. That's basically just so if you heard the term specialist or generalist, you knew what they meant.
Yep.
Thanks for that reassurance.
Yep. Very helpful.
Okay, now your turn.
Go get him.
I am clicking the pictures.
Oh, okay.
I'm so busy.
I am.
What
Okay.
is that?
Fine, I guess I'll talk. Trophic levels, okay, are the nourishment levels in a food chain. So we have primary consumers. Primary consumers are herbivores, and they eat producers. Your producers are going to be things like your grass or anything that can produce its own energy. Now, we also have secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are carnivores that eat herbivores. Tertiary consumers, these are carnivores that eat carnivores that eat secondary consumers. And then finally we have the little bit of everything, omnivores like us, like such as humans that eat both plants and animals. Maybe listed at different trophic levels in different food chains. Just kind of depends.
Sometimes you'll see them as a tertiary, sometimes you'll see them as a secondary. I haven't seen very many that I see them as a primary, though.
So, in this little picture at the bottom, that gerbil is a primary consumer because he's going to eat grains and grass. The producers, the snake is a secondary consumer, and then the fox is a tertiary consumer.
No, it's okay. I just can't rest my wrist on there to write.
I know, you do a very good job of writing like that.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Reassurance today.
Yes, I have one more question.
Yes.
What did the fox say?
Yes.
Okay. A food web shows all the interconnectedness, all the interconnected feeding relationships in the ecosystem. This is when it can get a little bit hairy. An organism may have multiple feeding relationships in an ecosystem, And a food web emphasizes the complicated feeding relationships and energy flow in an ecosystem.
So like I told my class, it's called a food web because everything is interconnected like it is in a spider web. The spider web doesn't have one single strand. It has all these strands interconnected, linking to each other.
That's a very good analogy.
I wonder if that's where they came up with the name for it.
No, they came up with it because of the interweb.
Oh, because of the internet that
Yeah.
They probably
Al Gore
don't know
invented.
They knew about it in the 1800s.
Okay, so our next point is going to talk about matter cycling in and out of an ecosystem. That's a cool picture.
I know. Every time I see it, I think that's a cool picture.
Okay, water cycles through the environment. The hydrologic
Hydrologic or water.
cycle, I can say water. Water cycle is the circular pathway of water on Earth. Hence, cycle, circular pathway. Organisms all have bodies made of mostly water. So if you look at this diagram, it will show you the water cycle, which in your notes you might pause after we get done talking and draw a quick picture of this. You can start at any point and it's going to cycle throughout because it's a water cycle. But if we start up here with precipitation, it rains
rain.
down, or snow.
Oh, yes.
Rain or snow, it's going
Or
to
hail.
it's going to fall from the sky and it's going to land on this mountainside. It'll then experience surface runoff. It'll come down to the lake. From the lake, it'll enter groundwater. Through seepage, it'll then enter a water storage in the ocean. Evaporation occurs and condensation, and then it returns to precipitation.
It returns.
Oh, I thought that was my timeout.
No.
Or you can also have transpiration. I cannot talk today. That will turn to condensation and precipitation. So it works, and see how I formed a circle here? Isn't that amazing?
And transpiration is, you can kind of think of it like the sweat of plants.
Gross.
Yeah. You know,
I knew they worked out.
usually gross things stick in my mind better, so. Oh, I guess I should click the rest of them. What's going on?
Elements essential for life also cycle through the ecosystem. A biological cycle, or
Biogeochemical cycle is the movement of a particular chemical through the biological and geological parts of an ecosystem. The main processes involved in the oxygen cycle are photosynthesis and respiration.
And this, photosynthesis and respiration, would be how animals and plants transfer oxygen or other gases into the Earth's system. So if you ever saw a question that asked how plants and animals are involved in the gas exchange, it would be through photosynthesis and
I think that's what
respiration.
the bell needs to use for. Bing, bing, bing! Important, duh!
Okay, oxygen cycles Oxygen cycles indirectly through an ecosystem by the cycling of other nutrients.
And this would be an example of that, how gas exchange occurs. We
Breathe out.
respirate, we release carbon dioxide that plants then
Exhale.
take in. Then they have photosynthesis that occurs that hopefully you remember how through our last unit. Well, not last unit, but a past unit. Photosynthesis then releases oxygen. Oxygen is then what we take in, animals, and it continues on in a cycle.
It's the cycle of life. Carbon is the building block of life. It's very, very important. The carbon cycle then is a very important cycle. The carbon cycle moves carbon from the atmosphere through the food web and returns it back to the atmosphere. Carbon is emitted by the burning of fossil fuels.
Which would be like gasoline in your car.
Okay, yeah. Some carbon is stored for long periods of time in areas called carbon sinks, which is how we get that fuel for your vehicles.
That's why we drill into ocean beds to get oil.
Yep.
So we have another one that you might want to jot down real quick and pause. We have, where do I want to start here? We'll start with fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are mined, that sounds funny,
Extracted.
extracted. They enter the
Factory.
refinery.
Through combustion, they release carbon dioxide into the air. Air is then taken in through photosynthesis for plants, or carbon dioxide. They then respirate, which animals then use it. Also, another route, we have respiration that can go back up into the air, into your atmosphere.
Yep.
Carbon dioxide and breathing.
Decomposition of organisms would then result in fossil fuels. You have respiration of marine animals and photosynthesis occurring in those marine animals, and carbon dioxide dissolving in the water.
Yes. The problem with this cycle is that becoming a fossil fuel takes millions of years. So it is not a very quick cycle like the oxygen cycle that you sit there and you talk to a flower for hours and you feel like it gives you the oxygen back.
Edit, Mr. Deer sits and talks to flowers for hours.
Now we know how Mr.
That's why my
senses
plants look
things.
really good and green and theirs are dead.
Well, this is true. My plants are dead. Alright, nitrogen cycles are next one. Thank you. See, I totally failed. This takes place mostly underground. It is also very important, especially if you're a plant or you like eating plants. Some bacteria convert gaseous nitrogen into ammonia through a process that is called nitrogen fixation. Fixates it. Okay, some nitrogen-fixing bacteria live in nodules on the roots of plants, and others just live freely in the soil. This is why a lot of fertilizers have nitrogen, is to put nitrogen back into the soil. If you don't believe me, go look at some fertilizer.
Oh, jeez.
Awesome. There's more.
Okay, gosh.
There you go.
Okay, and this would be the explanation of what's going on here, so you can jot this one down. Ammonia is released into the soil and is transformed into ammonium. Nitrifying bacteria change the ammonium to nitrate. Nitrogen moves through the food web and returns to the soil during decomposition. So I would also pause right here and jot down this little cycle also. We will do an activity which will help you with some of these cycles also.
You will be graded on your ability to draw a squirrel in this cycle.
Maybe in Mr. O'Deer's class.
Always.
Looks like the squirrel's talking to the plants.
That's because he knows how plants need to grow.
It is a phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus cycle takes place at and below ground level. And this is the explanation of this cycle, which you can pause afterwards and draw this one. Phosphate is released by the weathering rocks. Phosphorus moves through the food web and returns to the soil during decomposition. Phosphorus leaches into the underground from the soil and is locked into sediments. Both mining and agriculture add phosphorus into the environment. Not much more to say about that
There's
one.
also phosphorus in your pee.
Thanks for that, Tortier. And we should be able to cover that. Pyramid models is the distribution of energy and matter in an ecosystem.
An energy pyramid shows the distribution of energy among trophic levels. Energy pyramids compare energy used by producers and other organisms on trophic levels. Between each tier of an energy pyramid, up to 90% of the energy is lost into the atmosphere as heat. Only 10% of the energy at each tier is transferred from one trophic level to the next.
So you're going to lose it. Only 10% is going to be transferred up, and 90% is going to be lost to heat. So remember, lost to heat. So if we started this one, I know we're running out of time here, of 10 units of energy, how much would be transferred to the next level? Only 1.
And then it would be 0.1?
Yeah, 0.1.
Start off
And
with
then
100.
I know, I
0.01.
did that not thinking.
Yes. Oh.
Now we're done. Okay.
Sure.
Other pyramid models illustrate an ecosystem's biomass and distribution of organisms. Biomass is measured as the total dry mass of organisms in a given area. It's about all they need to know about biomass.
Yeah.
Okay, and a pyramid shows the number of individual organisms at each trophic level. This is a pyramid of numbers. Okay, so it's going to show you the numbers of organisms combined at each level. That's what these numbers are: tertiary, secondary consumers, primary consumers, and producers. A vast number of producers are required to support even a few number of consumers at the top. So we have a few number up here, but we need a whole lot more